Brad Nelson's bringing to the table, but if Brad can keep the mana constrained for Mengucci while applying some pressure to his life total, he can win.
Yeah, and very big here. Brad Nelson winning the die roll here, so he will be able to deploy some of his counters. But look, he actually mulliganed a hand with cheap interaction because he was a little light on mana.
Boy, that's a hand right there, though. Look at that one. The only downside is you got to send one of these cards back. It's a beautiful hand. He's going to get rid of Quench and kind of be more proactive. He does need to find a land here out of the next couple of draw steps, but if he does, he has that killer combo of 2-mana Accelerator into Frilled Mystic and Nightpack Ambusher, really forcing Andrea Mengucci to figure out what he's up to.
Specifically, he really wants Forest, right? If he draws an island, that's not going to do him any favors. But if he draws exactly Forest, he now has kind of that 1-2 punch of Frilled Mystic and Nightpack Ambusher.
Oh, he didn't get it, though. He's only got the 1 green mana source. A little bit unfortunate here for Brad, but he did pick up a Mystical Dispute that he's going to fire off on Risen Reef here, and he still has a chance to draw Forest right now.
Green source?
Well.
And Andrea also kept a bit of a slow hand here. I mean, he had a turn 3 Risen Reef, and his hand is just all lands.
Doing really nothing else for, well, I guess I shouldn't say that, until this turn. But the good news is, for Brad Nelson fans, he did draw another Mystical Dispute, even if it wasn't another land. It looks like Andrea Mengucci is going to play around it here and just run out Leafkin Druid. He doesn't want to get quenched or disputed.
Very heads
there
up
we go, Breeding Pool.
Brad Nelson does find the green source here, so now he's going to be able to apply the pressure. This is kind of the recipe for success. Have access to kind of both the Frilled Mystic and the Nightpack Ambusher, run out the Nightpack Ambusher, and then just kind of close out the game with that creature.
This is kind of a sweet play from Brad as well. He played the Breeding Pool untapped, even though when you look, doesn't really need that extra mana. If he's going to counter a spell with Mystical Dispute, it's going to be blue anyway. So he's just representing that he's got, you know, another 2-drop in his hand like Quench.
Yeah, and Andrea's completely out of gas here, right? He does have the Castle Ventress to do some scrying. He really needs to find something like a Hydroid Krasis to fight through some of this counter magic, but Brad's looking pretty good here. He's got an additional Frilled Mystic along with that Nightpack Ambusher that he's looking to run out.
Big draw step for Andrea Mengucci. He needs to get something going very quickly, and it was another island off the top. His hand is all lands, and that's going to clear the way for Nightpack Ambusher to hit the battlefield, and the pressure is going to start mounting very quickly. Mengucci, the window to draw something huge is closing and closing fast.
Yeah, this is huge. Andrea needs specifically, I think it's just Hydroid Krasis, right? Because Brad can just counter anything else.
Okay, here we go, in for 7. Andrea's life total plummeting here. He will now have lethal out there. He's going to make a 3/3 Wolf. He also has Frilled Mystic that he can add to the board to get through Leafkin Druid, so it's got to be something for Mengucci here. He activates Castle Ventress, 1 to the top, so he found something that he likes. Let's see if it is a Hydroid Krasis.
It's a Cavalier of Thorns, and that's going to do it.
That's going to
Brad Nelson's going to win game 1.
That's going to be game. He's going to run out the Cavalier. Frilled Mystic counters. Oh, wait a second. Is it 9? It's actually 9 damage, isn't it?
Oh, he can block the 4/4. Yeah, you are correct. It is 9.
Got a little ahead of ourselves.
He is alive, but at the same time, I mean,
he's really dead.
He's going to go down to 1. And what is Andrea going to be able to play next? Oh,
no,
never mind.
And that'll do it anyway. How about a haste creature here? A 3/3 land says, I'm going to seal the deal right now. And Mengucci scoops him up, and that is exactly how Brad drew it up. Not only did Andrea Mengucci never really get anything going, he flooded hard. Boy, he still had lands in his hand when he lost that game.
Yeah, but you know, at the same time, that is kind of the nature of the ramp deck, right? So sometimes you have so many ways to kind of generate mana, and sometimes you will just draw too many mana sources, right? His deck is playing, it looks like 28 lands along with 4 Leafkin Druids and 4 Growth Spirals. I mean, over half of his deck is mana sources, right?
Yep.
So there's just going to be those instances where you're just going to draw too many of your mana sources, and if you're playing a deck that has hard counters in it, sometimes all it takes is 1 hard counter to just kind of end the game.
Brad Nelson also fighting for a spot at the World Championship, and he's got 2 kind of interesting scenarios ahead of him. He can win this match and then win out, making him the champion. That'll put him in the seat, of course. Interestingly, if Andrea Mengucci ends up beating Brad here, then these 2 are already Freds, but then Brad becomes the biggest Andrea Mengucci fan on the planet because he needs him to win out, and that would put Brad in as well.
Yeah.
Crazy scenarios unfolding here. Remember, this is the last event of our season as well, so those last seats, well, they're filling up quickly, but they are not all completely spoken for. Brad Nelson still hoping to find himself in Hawaii in just a few months' time.
Curious to see, we saw Chris Kavartak kind of sideboard in Lovestruck Beast against the Simic Flash deck as, Pyotr Golgovsky board in Lovestruck Beast as kind of a way to kind of put pressure on the Simic Flash deck just by having a creature. I wonder if Mengucci's going to do that as well, because if you look at his sideboard, he does have a pair of Lovestruck Beasts in his sideboard.
Boy, I tell you what, they really looked great. They really did. They looked fantastic because the 5/5s are just bigger than almost everything that Brad does on the ground, and they provide such a huge brick wall. And then as we saw, it's a Simic deck. It's not like they can just kill all your creatures. You start slamming for 5 early, and you can give Brad fits, although we don't see any yet here from Mengucci if he did bring him in.
Exactly. Mengucci really wants to find land number 5 here to deploy one of his 5 drops. An untapped land number 5 to deploy one of his 5 drops.
Did he find it? No. Temple of Mystery. If you look down on Brad's side, he does have the Frilled Mystic at the ready. This time, though, no Nightpack Ambusher, which is actually what he'd probably prefer.
Yeah, but Andrea Mengucci does have the Mystical Dispute here. He might not run out the Hydrate Crisis this turn, because right now that Brad has access to 4 mana, you can see a Nightpack Ambusher. If you see it, you might want to counter that. Also, potentially even more important, if you do tap out this turn, Brad can slam Nissa Who Shakes the World next turn because he'll have access to 5 mana.
Brad, with the Growth Spiral, does have access now to Petty Theft as well if he'd like. I don't know how important it is to set Leafkin Druid back into hand here. Also, it does take on a little bit of risk. If it gets countered, he won't have the chance to cast Brazen Borrower later. Depends on how much he values that as well.
It's actually totally reasonable, because if you do that, there's a very high your Nissa is very likely to resolve here, right? Because part of the issue here is if you play Nissa with the Growth Spiral, you're going to have Nissa plus Mystical Dispute, right? But if Andrea responds with his own Mystical Dispute, Brad will then Mystical Dispute back. Andrea will have 3 mana to pay for the Mystical Dispute here, right?
Sure.
So by bouncing the Leafkin Druid, even if Andrea Mengucci casts a Mystical Dispute, the Mystical Dispute would not be 1. I'm so used to just costing 1 mana. It's actually going to cost the full 3.
Also interesting here is that Andrea is on just 1 blue mana at this point. He has Temple of Mystery tapped right now, but of course the Leafkin only making green. Here's Fabled Passage now for Brad.
Yeah, so the coast should actually be clear here for Brad. Right.
And there we go, Mystical Dispute countering a Mystical Dispute. We've seen that a lot of times, and this is a huge step for Brad Nelson. He has resolved Nissa Who Shakes the World. This is the best card in his deck, and this is the way that he can apply massive pressure to Mengucci's life total. Mengucci must respond now, and it looks like he's got a good response with Nissa of his own, potentially. One of the ways that Mengucci can kind of break serve on the Nissa fight here is that he has Hydrate Crisis in his hand. And if he gets to untap with his own copy of Nissa and can play a massive Hydrate Crisis, that might be too much for Brad to overcome.
Yeah, this is their turn. Andrea has to play something, has to make a big impact on the board here. If he runs out of Nissa, I mean, he does have the Nissa, but Brad, keep in mind, does have a pair of Brazen Borrowers in hand. So, Andrea's going to be able to make a 3/3, but Brad on the following turn can then bounce the Nissa and then have access to Frilled Mystic to counter it.
It's a huge play for Brad. If he's able to just keep the tempo advantage on his side, where he gets to have a Nissa and not have to pay for it every single turn, he can get way, way ahead of Mengucci and maybe even bury him in damage at some point here.
And then Mengucci does have to decide whether or not he wants to get in with the Hydrate Crisis just to have an additional blocker here to protect his Nissa who shakes the world.
As it stands from Brad's perspective, it looks like he's fine with all of this because of the Brazen Borrower in hand anyway. In fact, he'd probably prefer it.
Yeah, but Brad in really good position here because, typically the person who gets to untap with Nissa Who Shakes the World is the one who's going to be largely ahead. So now he has access to, 11 mana this turn.
Yep, all of it. He drew Castle Vantress for the turn, and this is an important moment in this match. And I don't know if you caught it, but Brad kind of sat back in his chair, took a deep breath, because this is a huge turn for him. As you mentioned, the Nissa Who Shakes the World on the battlefield with all of your lands untapped, a couple of forests as well, is such a beautiful place to be when you have spells in your hand, and Brad is poised now to take over this game. Brad in the tank now about what to do with Brazen Borrower. He's kind of having a little think here about how best to tap his mana, maximize the mana that he does have access to. He'd love to leave up Frilled Mystic for any play that Mengucci makes, whether it's Nissa coming down or something else next turn.
Yeah, it doesn't look like there is a way for him to just attack Nissa down by using the Brazen Bower to bounce the other creatures. So it looks like his main course of attack here is going to just be to bounce the Nissa, have access to the Frilled Mystic, and be the one that has that Nissa generating a 3/3 creature every single turn. This also will give him the mana if Andrea Mengucci doesn't, play anything out, to also activate Castle Vantage potentially. So lots of things to do at instant speed here for Brad Nelson.
Brad's going to animate an island. And thanks to the Paradise Druid, and of course Nissa as well, he's got plenty of mana for the Frilled Mystic.
He might actually just be okay here offering the trade of the island here with Andrea Mengucci.
That's exactly what he does. Sends in both islands into the red zone. Mengucci is going to oblige him by trading off island for island. But still, this does not stop Brad from doing what he wants to do on Mengucci's turn.
Yeah, so now Brad will have access to 6 mana here, it looks like.
Yep.
So we'll have the ability to cast Frilled Mystic and also bounce something with the Brazen Borrower.
Yeah, Petty Theft plus Frilled Mystic. Look, this is a tempo deck. This is exactly the position that it wants to find itself in. And it's starting to feel like Andrea Mengucci, well, it might be closing the door on him here.
Ooh, okay, so he's going to actually bounce the Leafkin Druid here, probably. That's what it looks like if he's running out the Petty Theft here on the Brazen Borrower.
Yeah, that's exactly what he's doing. And this still leaves him the ability to cast Frilled Mystic on Mengucci's turn as well. So Brad Nelson really trying to cramp down on the mana here from Andrea Mengucci as he passes the turn back, and it's a growth spiral off the top of the library. How awkward for Andrea. He doesn't even have a land drop for the turn.
And Brad, what he's doing by doing that is also playing around a potential mystical dispute that Andrea Mengucci could have. Because if Andrea Mengucci had Leafkin Druid 4 lands in play, draws a land, slams Nissa, and has mystical dispute, then the Frilled Mystic gets countered.
Look at this. His only play for the turn is Leafkin Druid. That's going to clear the way for Brad to play Brazen Borrower. He still has Nissa. He gets to animate another land, and this is going to be a massive attack step here for Brad Nelson.
Yeah, Brad is just too far ahead on board. I just don't see Andrea coming back from this board state.
Wow, awesome play from Brad there to put that Leafkin Druid back to play around the mystical dispute. And also, in this case, since Andrea just didn't have a land at all, he couldn't cast Nissa at all.
Right,
Like,
right.
he didn't even have the
There's
option
also
of
that
trying
potential,
it.
right? It's like
Yeah.
you just might not draw land number 5.
Unbelievable. And look at this, Brad Nelson turning the corner here. It looks like he just wants to run out Nightpack Ambusher while Andrea Mengucci is tapped out. He says, what is the worst thing you could do here?
Yeah,
You're going to play Nissa and make a 3/3 and have to tap your Druid? No problem.
Well, he just still has access to Frilled Mystic here, right?
So, you're right, he does.
He can just do it all.
Oh my God, Brad Nelson having his cake and eating it too, attacking Andrea Mengucci down to 9.
I mean, this is the power of Nissa who shakes the world.
Yes.
You untap, you are likely the player that's going to be winning.
How about twice?
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Andrea Mengucci, he really has no great options here. He can play Cavalier of Thorns, and Frilled Mystic is going to counter it, and that's going to be game. Brad Nelson defeats him 2-0 and advances on, keeping control, by the way, not only of his destiny in this tournament, but his destiny for a world slot.
Yeah, and even in the interview earlier with Brad Nelson, he thought that he had a slight edge here. He thought he would rather play against Andrea Mengucci's ramp deck than actually playing against Seth Manfield in the mirror. So I think he does kind of like the way this matchup plays out. And, this is kind of the game, right? The tempo game. You kind of try to slow down their mana, slam your Ambusher, slam your Nissa, and then just take over.
Right. It's interesting because when we look back to the other game that we saw,